Democrats are having an identity crisis. It's resulting in their lowest approval ever. Internal fighting and no clear leader. My political panel and I will have a seance for the Democrat dreams that are drifting away. Plus, President Trump spoke to Zelensky today. OAN's Gabby Kuchia has the latest. And the National Institute of Health was using grant programs like a slush fund. We've got one whistleblower story coming up. All next on the Matt Gaetz Show. Let's do this.
We're shaking up Washington, D.C. We're breaking the fever.
You ever watch this guy on television? It's like a machine. He's great. Matt Gaetz.
Have you ever watched a group project fall apart in real time? That's the Democratic Party right now. The organizing principle of the Democratic Party for the last 8 years has been to call Donald Trump and his MAGA legion of supporters fascists, Nazis, dictators, even domestic terrorists. Today, a fresh piece in the Associated Press showcases the downstream negative impact of this strategy, not for the Republicans, but for the Democrats. When your politics isn't about ideas, innovations, changes to help people and protect their rights, it just isn't durable. What's crazy is that these folks spent the entire first term of the Trump presidency calling him illegitimate. Then they got a little power when Joe Biden came to the White House, and now we're left wondering whether Joe Biden was even legitimately running the country or if some crew of the Obama people with an auto pen were. That's what Mike Howell from the Heritage Foundation's Oversight Project thinks.
Biden's own staffers, who in the New York Post article last week said that staffers were walking around with this auto pen authority, that nobody knew if it was really the president ordering it, and everyone was freaked out about it. The guy could not speak coherently. He was clearly out of it. Everyone saw it at the debate. There is no way he was the decision-making principal for those 4 years.
So who was? Who was making the decisions?
Neera Tanden seems to be a key official. She was a staff secretary for a key period of time. Anthony Blinken and Jake Sullivan seem to exercise outside authority. And I think there's some people outside the government, perhaps from the Obama network, that were weighing in on a lot of these things. But I think Joe Biden was essentially the figurative president, a figurehead of a government being run by different people.
El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele says America is suffering a judicial coup right now. We may have just survived the coup of the auto pen. Now, the Democratic Party seeks a path forward, and they don't seem to know where they're going or even who they're following. Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer voted with Republicans to keep the government open, to enhance funding for ICE, and to keep Musk and Doge unbridled. Democrats wanted chaos, and Schumer didn't feed the bloodlust. That led House Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries to react this way when asked about his leadership colleague.
Is it time for new leadership in the Senate?
Next question.
That's cold. Here's my next question. Can we get a camera and a microphone in the next struggle session Schumer and Jeffries are mandated to have with Bernie Sanders as the mediator? There are new rumors that Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is contemplating a primary challenge to Schumer for his Senate seat. We don't believe those rumors. We actually think she's running for president. But the scuttlebutt is telling nonetheless about the vulnerability of the Democrat Senate leader. The quotes from Democrats about Democrats showcase the disorientation they've worked themselves into. Representative Maxwell Frost, a Florida Democrat, the youngest in Congress, he said this, quote, "I think we're in a place internally where we're having these family discussions and figuring out what the path forward is." How ominous. Frost noted that Trump is winning voters without a college education who make less than $100,000 a year. Those used to be reliable Democrat voters, but apparently they didn't want the third-grade teacher picking the gender of their kid and came our way. Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton, rarely one to mince words, had this to say in the AP story, quote, "The Democratic brand absolutely needs to change. We will not win with the status quo." Moulton said that Democrats must be very public about their reckoning, like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He said this, quote, "I think we need a high-level message from leadership that, hey, we got the message in the last election, we heard you voters, you voted us out across the board, and we're going to change." But it begs the question, what are they changing? CNN is in total meltdown because voters seem to dislike Democrats now more than even before the 2024 election.
All I have to say, Democrats, call your office. You know, we're March Madness times. Terrible, 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 to quote the great Charles Barkley. View Democratic Party favorably. CNN SRS, look at this, 29%. NBC News, you want to go lower than that? How about 27%? Both are record lows, the lowest going back to 1992 in CNN polling, the lowest going back on record to 1990 in NBC News polling. The majority of Americans hold an unfavorable or negative view of the Democratic Party at this point. All I can say is I'm a big fan of the oldies, so I'm going to quote Chubby Checker, how low can you go?
Thoughts and prayers, CNN. I feel like we ought to have to send flowers or something. Then there's Democrat Congressman Brad Schneider, who said this about his own party, quote, we haven't gotten to where we need to be, and we're not doing what we need to do. It seems obvious, but it's a symptom, not a cause. The cause of Democrat disarray seems to be that they don't prove to the voters that they're actually fighting for the voters. And when they merely spasm against Trump, they support wasteful spending, forever wars, lockdowns, and the religion of transgenderism. And they've lost the country. So joining us now is the founder of the WalkAway campaign, Brandon Straka, and Riley Lewis, host of The Real Story here on OAN. So Riley, let's start with you first. What do the Democrats need to change?
So much. But really what they need to do here is start cobbling together a real policy platform. Being anti-MAGA and anti-Trump isn't going to do it for most voters in this country, and the poll data you referenced shows that. So I think moving forward for them, start determining for people what you really stand for, not just what you stand against.
So Brandon, we have seen these town halls all over the country, and what's interesting is the criticism isn't just coming at the Republicans. We are getting the strangest criticism levied at the Democrats. I'm going to show you a clip from a town hall that Democrat Glenn Ivey, congressman from Maryland, had recently. Take a listen.
Thank you for being polite with us, but when it comes to fighting these fights, we need you to be a little bit less polite, a little bit more hell no instead of a little bit no.
Fair enough.
And there may be a time when you and other congresspeople need to do civil disobedience. You need to be arrested.
Sure.
And I will go with you. I will stand next to you and be arrested.
And I was going to ask if you were going to be willing to be arrested, but I'm going to ask you a different question.
I'd be willing to be arrested again. Yes. Yeah. I've done it before.
So let's get this straight, Brandon. This is the movement that called MAGA grandmothers domestic terrorists, that called people who worship in traditional Catholic manners some sort of threat to the country, but now they're demanding their own congressman get arrested. Do you think that's the winning strategy?
I really don't. No, and I think the main reason why the Democrats have ended up where they've ended up at this point is because they allowed the most extremist fringe sect of their base to take complete control of their party and to hijack everything. They thought this was a good strategy and a good idea. That is what repelled people like me. I mean, I'd say moderate centrist Democrat for a very long time. And to be honest with you, and look, nobody dunks on the Democratic Party more than I do at this point, but I actually loved the Democratic Party. I actually loved being a part of that party when I thought that they were doing something good for the world. But as they have become so extremist and embraced all of these people, socialism, Marxism, and the violence and the disorderliness that's come along with being a Democrat, they've repelled a lot of common sense centrist people. And MAGA now has actually become kind of the common sense centrist movement for all people that's bringing people in.
You know, Riley, we cover politics every day on our shows, and we were discussing today, they don't even have any good villains anymore. Like, who are we supposed to point to as the leader of the Democratic Party right now as they seem to be trying to find their footing?
Yeah, look, it's really unclear, and that's an existential question for them. But to Brandon's point as well, look, the American people have given Donald Trump a broad mandate to get terrorists out of this country, secure the border, and clean up corruption. And Democrats clearly haven't learned anything from the election because they're fighting back against it tooth and nail. They've been on the wrong side of every 80-20 issue that one can imagine, and they still keep fighting it. So I don't know who's calling the shots right now, but they definitely need someone to step up and get back to common sense because this party is a sinking ship.
And I just wonder where the energy is in the party. If at the town halls right now, you've got people saying, unless you're willing to be arrested and break the law, you can no longer be a part of our movement. And these were the folks that said we were just the worst folks ever. They were the law and order party. Brandon, can you even see an issue set remaining that Democrats could latch on to try to make the case that they're at least for the working men and women of the country? Or is that over, gone, and this is a party of the Acela corridor, the liberal elites, and MSNBC panels?
Well, in a way, Matt, that's what I feel like they tried to do when they subbed in Kamala Harris. They subbed in and then she just started repeating every Donald Trump talking point and policy point. The problem is that nobody believed it. And this is one of the biggest problems that they have right now, too, is that they are losing the information war that they controlled for so long. When they social media, when they used to dominate the news media for so long, but they're losing that grip on that because of Elon Musk taking over X, and even now Mark Zuckerberg saying that he's going to free up Facebook. People are getting more information now, and they're starting to see through the smoke screens that the Democrats have used for so long. So when they did this and they tried to pull off this mass manipulation and psyop by having Kamala Harris just espouse Donald Trump talking points, everyone saw through it and realized that there was no truth or substance behind it. If they are, in fact, going to change their identity, it has to be legitimate. It has to be genuine. People can see through, I think, the falseness and the fake platitudes at this point. They have to come up with something that actually resonates at a genuine level. And what they're doing right now is not working. And if I can say very quickly, too, when you're talking about these people at the town halls and stuff, I'm in the field all the time. I'm going to these events, doing man on the street interviews with people at these Democrat causes like the Women's March. These events are shrinking. They're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the people who are showing up for them are, again, the more extremist part of their base. They've got to stop listening to these people, get rid of the extremist left, and come back to the common sense core in the middle. That's the only way they're ever going to win again.
Well, you wonder where they go next, because right now it's a movement that seems to have as its organizing principle the destruction of Tesla charging stations, which doesn't really seem to invite a lot of people in. Like, nobody wants to go to your party to go destroy a Tesla charging station or commit vandalism. But Riley, do you think that violence is too far away, given how the base seems to be pushing lawmakers further and further away from the interests of the American people?
I mean, in that instance, I'd like to think it's just a few radicals on the fringe, but to Brandon's point earlier, those radicals are taking over the party and they're getting into positions of power within it and starting to dictate its future. So I think really that's something they have to quash. And look, for any moderate Dems or centrist Dems in the party, you have to stand up right now and push back against that, because you are being steamrolled and railroaded, and it's turning off, including lots of Democrats. Look at this Trump administration. You have lifelong progressives and Democrats who left their party, warned the American people about the dangers of it, and then jumped on the Trump train. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, I don't know what else will.
Brandon, do you get to this point when you take the path of calling the other side Nazis and insurrectionists? Because, when I was in high school and college and thinking about politics deeply for the first time, we were debating the marginal tax rate and what your policy was on trade and surveillance. And now it just seems to be an exercise in demonizing the other side. There is a portion of that base that Riley's talking about who would actually like to see, work collectively toward our shared goals as Americans. But have they burned that road with the way they've gone after the Donald Trump and MAGA movement supporters?
Well, certainly, I don't think that's done them any favors, because, again, I think that, they've been screaming from the mountaintops for so long about how evil Republicans are and bigots and racists and all of these different things. But here's the biggest problem, is that we had 4 years under Joe Biden and Democrat Party leadership, and everybody's lives got markedly worse. And every possible metric that a person could try to see, is America a better place? Is my life am I better off today than I was 4 years ago? They made everybody's lives worse. And so I think that people are looking and going like, look, I'm not going to listen to you anymore, because you're just gaslighting us. You're trying to tell us how bad the other side is. But when the other side is in charge, my taxes are lower. I have more money. There's more jobs. I'm safer. There's less crime in my neighborhood. There's less illegal immigrants flooding over the border. And I think people are now putting two and two together and saying, oh, I think this party is just lying to me to fearmonger so that I won't consider supporting the people who are actually making my life better.
Riley, in moments like this, there's always the risk of overreaction and taking your mandate too far. Donald Trump seems laser focused right now on securing the border, rescuing the economy, stopping the wars. Do you see any issues out there that could be potential landmines as Democrats are self-destructing for Republicans to maybe stay away from?
I mean, I do think there are some issues here and there, but overall, I actually think things are going very well, and I want to see the same energy and focus moving forward. I think the biggest thing is trying to get around the activist judges, trying to deal with the fierce opposition. This is not going to happen overnight, and I see this as a temporary slowdown in America's overall decline, and I think a lot of Americans see that too. So I think for him, it's just being able to follow through and execute, and then actually make sure that we don't have all the progress he's making just be undermined, because that's what's happening left and right. They're fighting it tooth and nail, and I think that's driving the fact that they're so unpopular now with so many Americans.
Riley Lewis is the host of The Real Story here on One America News at 7 o'clock Eastern. It's one of my favorite shows on the network. And Brandon Straka is the founder of the WalkAway campaign. Thank you both for joining me and sharing your perspective.
Thanks, Matt.